Good morning, everyone. I am on to make another recipe today. It is definitely soup season in North Dakota, and I am a soup lover. I don't know about you, but it's a wonderful meal in a bowl other than cereal. Okay, so we are gonna make one of my favorite soup recipes today, and this again has got like a lot of sentimental attachment to this recipe. So today we are making chicken wild rice soup. Chicken wild rice soup from one of my favorite cookbooks ever, Byerly's. I don't know if you know what Byerly's is, but Byerly's is a grocery store in the Minneapolis area is where I'm familiar with it. So long time ago, like the first time I had been in Minneapolis, like as an adult, and I can remember going into this grocery store, and I love grocery shopping. I know it's not for everybody, but shopping, I love grocery shopping. So like walking the aisles in a grocery store, like you walk all the aisles in Target, is a familiar thing for me. And I just remember going in there and the aisles are carpeted. And I'm kind of like, what in the world? We are like in a high-end, beautiful grocery store. And they had a restaurant in there at one time. And they would serve their Byerly's, their famous Byerly's chicken wild rice soup. And of course, when I realized there was a cookbook, I had to have the book. And I mark my cookbooks and mark the indexes and highlight like all the recipes that I've made. It's just what I do. And then of course I mark the recipes as well, so they're easier to find. But if you were to go through my index, about half of these recipes in here have been made. And I don't think there has been one thing that has been a flop, which is pretty miraculous, right? So we're gonna make this soup today for lunch, because it's a soup day in North Dakota. Did I say that? Okay, so we're starting out with 6 tablespoons of butter, and we are melting this butter. And then we're just gonna make a roux, okay? So if you know what a roux is, it's kind of a thickening agent. So it is a melted fat, and then you add a thickening agent. In this case, it's flour. So we're using butter and flour. So I'm just gonna get this melted here, 6 tablespoons of butter. And then we are also going to saute some onion in there. And if my mom is watching, of course, she has to leave the onion out because she's allergic to onion. I can remember growing up having like pizza and Italian food and then having it like at my friend's house. There's a difference. No offense, Mom, because my mom is a fantastic cook. But yeah, we just never grew up having onion or garlic in anything. So once I started cooking with onion and garlic, for people that are used to having that type of flavor, it really makes a difference. It's delicious. So we are adding some onion in this as well. So it calls for just a tablespoon of minced onion. And thankfully, I still have onions in my wine cellar because it's kind of cold storage in the basement. So these actually came from the garden yet. So I'm chopping up, like I say, about a tablespoon of minced onion. You might be able to hear that butter sizzling already. So we're just gonna cook this in the onion in this butter, and brown it up a little bit. Beauty. I got a little bit of a skin in here I need to take out. Okay, so then we're gonna add our flour. So it calls for 1/2 cup of flour. And again, this is just gonna make it so it thickens up. And then once we get the flour in here, you do have to so-called cook it for about a minute. So we are just going to whisk it for about a minute because you don't want that raw flour taste. Does that make sense? So we're gonna do that. I'm just gonna turn the heat down. Now this is a super good whisk, and I'll tell you why I love this whisk. This whisk has like a flat bottom on it. You probably can't see that really super good, but you know, a lot of them have a rounded bottom on them, and then I just don't like them as much. I like the flat bottom one. And I guess the same thing goes with my spoon. It's also a flat bottom, so you can kind of like scrape the bottom really well. Okay, so that's looking really good. It just kind of forms a paste is all it's doing, okay? So then the next thing we are to do is stir in our broth. Okay, so chicken broth. And I make my own from chicken stock. Okay, so I know you can buy like chicken broth in like a milk carton-y type thing, and that is totally fine. Whatever you do, I make mine just from, I'll show you the container here in a minute. But we're just gonna pour this in slow and whisk in all our broth. And then that's gonna kind of unpaste that stuff. Does that make sense? So it will make a nice base for our soup. Yum. Okay, so here's the chicken stock that I use. Again, from Penzeys Spices. And I recommend all of their things. I have said that before. Not their political views, but I recommend all their spices. It makes a difference. Okay, this is like beautiful, you guys. It almost matches the color of my Le Creuset pan. Just this very yellowish beauty of a color. Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is stir in our wild rice, chicken, and carrots. Now here's what I've done for this. So this is kind of crazy, but when I go to the trouble of doing chicken, I always just make up that part and freeze it so it's like ready to go. I don't have to worry about any of that. The wild rice is in here, the carrots are in here, and the chicken is in here, and it's good to go. Okay, so Shazam, that was super easy, right? So that's my little make ahead tip, especially if it's a dish that you do make often. It just makes it so much easier to grab for those ingredients, and they're already cooked and ready to mix in. Okay, so there we go. All right, so now in this particular recipe, if we weren't doing the chicken variety, you would be using half and half, but because we're doing the chicken variety, it calls for evaporated milk instead. So this you always want to shake up. I don't know if you've worked with the evaporated milk before, but it will like form, it will settle. Okay, it'll settle at the bottom of the can. So you want to try and mix that stuff back in. And we are just gonna dump in our evaporated milk. There we go. Okay, next thing, we're gonna add a little bit of salt because I just think you should. And I add pepper. It's not on my recipe, but I love pepper on everything. I think I get that from my cousin. I can remember growing up and going out to Dickinson when she would eat her meals, and I am not kidding when I say this. She would have like mashed potatoes or something like that, and she would pepper her food so heavily that it would be black. You would not know what she was eating. That's you, Desi. If you're watching, that's you. But I think part of my attraction to pepper was that whole thing. Of course, I love her. She's a great cousin, great friend as an adult for me. But yeah, she likes her pepper. She takes it very seriously. Okay, so there we go. Now our last thing is sherry. This would be our magic ingredient. I like a dry sherry. I don't want a lot of sweetness in this. Now it calls for 2 tablespoons. I'm eyeballing this. But this honestly is what gives it its really unique and wonderful flavor. And it gives it a wonderful aroma too. As it's cooking, it really, you can't go without the sherry, honestly. So that is it. And honestly, that is it. So we're gonna garnish it with a little fresh parsley. I'm just gonna chop up some parsley. This is Italian parsley, but it, in my opinion, doesn't really matter. I try and grow this in the basement during the summer months, but unfortunately my plant froze before I got it in. So no parsley for us during the winter here. It was just for the summer. Okay, so we're gonna put our parsley in there. And then it also calls for some almonds, so some slivered almonds. And like any nut, I think you should lightly toast them. It really brings out the flavor of a nut. I don't know why that is. I have not researched that. I just know they taste better. So I keep mine in a really nice airtight container, and we're gonna just garnish it on the bowl. Thing of it is, if you garnish the whole soup with that, they're gonna get kind of slimy, and I'm not a big fan of that. So instead, we're just gonna garnish the top. Now look at how pretty this is, you guys. It's so pretty. I don't know if you can see that, but like the little specks of the carrots and the parsley and the wild rice, it's just beautiful, and it smells so good. And we just do this. Ta-da, that's it. Serve it with some nice crusty bread. Serve it with a nice glass of wine if you're having this for dinner. It's just a wonderful meal in a bowl. So I hope you enjoyed this recipe. I hope you have a cookbook you can share with me. But honestly, this is the best book ever. I know it's like super old now, but I just use these recipes in here over and over and over again. This one is my favorite. There are two that I'm aware of that they had, but this is by far my favorite. So yeah, if you want a good recipe book, there you go. Okay, well, enjoy your meal. I hope you have something good planned on your menu today. I hope you have something good planned on your agenda today. So have a fun day, and we will chat later.